Hello, everybody. This is Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films and cheat because we oftentimes show 35mm films, specifically stuff from the National Archives, which originated on 35. But, you know, whatever. So that was great. That was some raw footage. I'm not sure what the project was. I couldn't read the slate. But it was something that was shot maybe for the U.S. government agency or maybe independently and then donated to the National Archives. I'm not sure, but it's nice slice of life stuff. Speaking of the government, here's some puppets.
Sir, you need an FHA-insured home improvement loan. Nah, I can repair this place myself. For a free consumer bulletin, write to FHA, Home Improvement, Department of Housing and Urban Development, Washington, D.C. Maybe I should have done that.
What's your problem?
I'm in a jam over how to finance a new house.
Financing a home needn't be a problem. This free FHA guide helps you measure your ability to pay for a home. Write to Home Financing, Federal Housing Administration, Washington, D.C.
Anybody got a jam-proof ballpoint?
He's trembling with fear. Needs a house, but afraid he'll get in over his head financially. Now, FHA has a free guide that tells how to finance a home wisely. Write to Home Financing, Federal Housing Administration, Washington, D.C.
I'll write for 2 copies. I need a bigger house, Doc, but I'm worried about financing it.
Well, FHA has a free guide that explains how to finance a home with payments you can afford. Well, that's one way to digest the facts. For your free copy, write to Home Financing, Federal Housing Administration, Washington, D.C. This doggone house is falling apart. Hey there, I think you need some home improvements. What are you, a wise guy? Listen, for a free consumer bulletin on home improvements, send a postcard to Home Improvement, Department 3, FHA, Washington, D.C. Of course, it helps if you have a home to improve. Boy, it's going to be nice to have a new roof on the house. Yeah. How are you paying for this, anyhow? With an FHA-insured home improvement loan. Excuse me. For a free consumer bulletin that explains how to finance home improvements, write to Home Improvement, Department 3, FHA, Washington, D.C. And do it now.
Oh, Crystal Ball, how can I buy a house?
This free FHA consumer bulletin explains how to buy a home you can afford with payments you can handle. Write to Home Purchases, Department 4, FHA, Washington, D.C. Over and out.
Son of a gun.
Son of a gun. Yeah, so I have been working with some National Archives stuff, as I've said before, and I stumbled across these FHA PSAs, and obviously love them because Jim Henson was this amazing creative genius who also had a wonderful sense of slapstick. And so, yeah, it's pretty great. But I know what you're saying. Some of you were like, "Where's Hoja? I need my Hoja." Well, you're in luck. Here's a film about Hoja's strange ways. Enjoy.
To make a moving picture, you need a camera, some film, and something to take a picture of. Our camera shows the familiar streets of a nearby town, and Slowfoot, get your head out of the picture. And across the village square is a coffee house where an old sheikh often retells the beloved stories of Nasereddin Hoja. Slowfoot. Our donkey is very happy to see us again. That is happy enough. Come along, Slowfoot. The sheikh will be waiting. Well, what's this? Oh, it's that lazy young radical, Hamid.
Someday I'll blow up that place.
What's wrong now, Hamid?
I was just telling the waiter how rotten his coffee is.
You'll never learn to get along with people, will you?
It's a free country, isn't it?
If they don't keep you locked up, it must be. Well, I hope that fella keeps out of our way while the sheikh tells of Nasereddin Hoja.
Quiet! Stop the music! It's nothing but noise.
Hamid, have you no manners?
Have they nothing but that strange music?
It happens to be American music.
Bah, no wonder it's bad.
Do you condemn everything foreign, Hamid?
Yes, I do. If it's strange, it doesn't make sense.
But Hamid, what about our economic cooperation with other nations?
Nobody helps you for nothing in this world.
Hamid, haven't you been taught anything but bitterness?
I've been taught not to trust Westerners. They dress differently. Their music is different. How can you trust them?
I guess no one is perfect except Hamid and his friends.
Foreign people with their strange ways can't be any good. You can't understand them.
You're not trying to. Hamid has not yet learned that different people have their own ways of doing good, even if those ways seem strange to us. Now, let the musicians go on playing. You know, this reminds me of a story of Nasereddin Hoja, which will show you what I mean. Centuries ago, when the conquering Emperor Tamerlane came to rule, he sent messengers to all corners of the land with a royal order that every village must choose a wise man to be the local judge. But if the emperor did not approve their choice, then a military governor would be sent to rule the village. Choose a wise judge or suffer military rule. this was a problem. Where in their little village could they find a man wise enough to be a judge and fool enough to face the emperor? The only man they could think of was Nasereddin Hoja, who did everything in his own strange but wise way. Perhaps the Hoja would be just the man to go before the Emperor Tamerlane. The emperor naturally wanted proof of every man's wisdom. And so he demanded that Nasereddin Hoja read from his book of law. But because Tamerlane was a foreigner, his laws were written in a foreign tongue. How the emperor laughed at the puzzled Hoja.
You are no wiser than the others. My gentle officers will have to rule your village.
At this threat, the Hoja summoned the last of his courage.
Not only can I read your good laws, sire, but I can even teach my donkey to read them. Give me the book and 1 week's time, sire. That is all I ask to prove my wisdom.
Now the emperor was puzzled.
If you can do such a thing, I will admit you are not a fool. But 1 week is all you get.
When news of this bargain reached the palace gate, the Hoja's friends became more worried than ever. They understood that Nasereddin did things in his own strange way. But this time, how could a donkey read? At last the week was up, and Tamerlane commanded, "Let the donkey read." It didn't seem possible. Little did the emperor guess that Nasereddin had hidden grains of barley between the pages. A strange way indeed, but it did look as though the donkey was reading. And so Tamerlane had to approve Nasereddin as judge of his village, but he dismissed the Hoja with a warning.
It is harder for a wise man to remain wise than for a fool to be a fool. And if I ever catch you doing a foolish act, it will be your last.
Now the emperor's guard had heard many stories of the Hoja's strange ways, and when he told them to his master, Tamerlane decided it would be wise to follow the Hoja and watch him closely.
You claim to be a wise man and you ride your donkey backwards? That is the way of a fool.
But this time the Hoja was not afraid.
Sire, if I rode my donkey forward, my back would always be to my friends. This way I can travel and talk to them at the same time. I am certain that you will understand this, since my donkey does.
And with a wisdom that came from understanding, the Emperor agreed that although the Hoja did things in his own way, they made very good sense indeed. And still the lesson remains for us. People have their own ways of doing things, and though the ways may seem strange to us, when we try to understand, they make good sense. Nasereddin knew this. I wonder if we do.
Wow. Pretty great. Yes, and not the same class as Jim Henson, but there you go. Now let's get some animation from those late year Coronet films. This one features a caveman, I think. Enjoy.
Suppose you were an inventor and you built machines to help you do work. Probably some of the machines would have only a few moving parts. And some would have many moving parts. But the more machines you made, the more you'd find yourself using certain mechanical parts over and over again. The inclined plane, the pulley, the wheel and axle, and the lever. These are the simple machines, the basic building blocks of mechanical devices. Each simple machine can be used just by itself. But in machines with several moving parts, there are often two or more simple machines linked together to do one job. To see exactly what happens when simple machines work together, we need to look at some basic things they all do separately. For instance, all simple machines make work easier. Here is a lever being used to do work. This is work? Well, to a scientist, work means something special. Scientists use an equation that says work equals force times distance, or W equals F times D. This means that when your foot exerts a force to move something through a distance, you do work. In this case, this is the input work. The force you exert times the distance that force moves your end of the lever. But when you do this, you cause the other end of the lever to move also. And when it does, it also exerts a force that moves something through a distance. So it too does work. This is the output work. With all simple machines, the input work and the output work are equal, except for small losses through friction. Now, the input work is equal to its force times distance, and the output work is equal to its force times distance. So, for all simple machines, the input force times its distance and the output force times its distance have to be equal. But if they're equal, how can a simple machine make your work easier? While the two sides of the equation have to be equal, nothing says that the two forces have to be equal, or that the two distances have to be equal. Only their products have to be the same. And it's because of this fact that simple machines can help us do work. Here's a lever with its fulcrum not in the middle. Suppose you want to raise this stump out of the ground. To do that, the lever has to exert, say, 60 pounds of force here. If you need to raise the stump 2 feet, that would be 60 pounds times 2 feet, or 120 foot-pounds of output work that the lever has to do. So your input also has to equal 120 foot-pounds of work. But notice that now your end of the lever moves a greater distance than the other end. While the output end moves a distance of 2 feet, your end moves 6 feet. 6 times what equals 120? 20. So you need to apply only 20 pounds of force. F times D still equals F times D. And now, with 20 pounds of force, you can lift a 60-pound load. You and the lever do the same amount of work, but you trade increased distance on your end to get increased force on the other end. You can make a similar trade with any other simple machine, for instance, with a pulley system. When this end of the rope moves a certain distance, this pulley system will move a load placed here only 1/4 as far. But when a force is applied here, the pulley system exerts 4 times as much force here to lift a load. Again, you trade increased distance to get increased force. But sometimes you don't want to get more force. You want to get more distance instead. Most simple machines can also help you do this. For instance, using a fishing pole as a lever, you can get this end to move a large distance to raise your catch, while you push this end down only a small distance. With the fulcrum here, when you push your end down 1 foot, the other end moves 4 feet. If your catch weighs 3 pounds, the output work equals 3 pounds times 4 feet, or 12 foot-pounds of work. Since there has to be the same amount of work here at the input end, which moves only 1 foot, you have to push down with 12 pounds of force. F times D still equals F times D. So with this lever, you do the opposite of what you did before. Now you trade a large force to move something a large distance. So with simple machines, you can put in increased distance to get an output of increased force. Or you can put in increased force to get an output of increased distance. Because you always trade one for the other. A simple machine can't increase both force and distance at the same time. But depending on how you build simple machines, you can control the amount of the trade. An easy way to think about this is to use the idea of mechanical advantage. That's the amount the simple machine multiplies the input force. Mechanical advantage is especially useful in understanding what happens when simple machines work together, as they do in this bolt cutter. To see how it works, you can think about just one side, since it's a mirror image of the other side. You apply your force here to this lever, which happens to be bent. It works the same way a straight lever does. This is the fulcrum. This lever applies its force to this lever. Here's its fulcrum. And you use the output force of this lever to cut something here. But exactly how do all these forces work? In levers, mechanical advantage is determined by how much longer one arm is than the other. In this lever, the long arm is 15 times as long as the short arm. So the mechanical advantage of this lever is 15. And on this lever, this arm is 3 times as long as this arm. So the mechanical advantage here is 3. But, and here's the key to how simple machines work together, notice that the output force of this lever is the input force of this lever. When simple machines work together this way, the whole arrangement is called a compound machine. To find the mechanical advantage of a compound machine, you multiply the mechanical advantages of the separate machines in it. Suppose you apply 20 pounds of force here. Then the other end of this lever applies 20 pounds times the mechanical advantage, 15, or 300 pounds of force. But that force, 300 pounds, becomes the input force of this lever, and this lever further multiplies it by its mechanical advantage, 3, making these levers cut with 3 times 300, or 900 pounds of force here. The output is this great because your input is multiplied by the two mechanical advantages together, 15 times 3, or 45. So 45 is the mechanical advantage of the whole compound machine. The arms of a bolt cutter combine simple machines of the same type, all levers. But often you combine different kinds of simple machines. You do this, for instance, when you use a simple automobile jack. This crank works as a wheel and axle machine. You can think of the path the handle follows as a large wheel which turns this axle. The axle turns another much smaller wheel here. And that simple machine supplies the input force for the other simple machine, these screw threads. Screw threads are really just an inclined plane that's wrapped around a core. The input force here causes the screw threads to turn, pulling these 2 points toward each other. The rest of the mechanism just makes this sideways force push up. The mechanical advantage of the crank is about 20, and the mechanical advantage of the screw threads is about 15. That makes a compound mechanical advantage of 20 times 15, or 300. So if you apply 30 pounds of force here, this jack will lift 30 pounds times 300, or 9,000 pounds. So it's possible to get tremendous mechanical advantages by combining two simple machines. But many compound machines combine more than two simple machines. If you take a wheel and axle machine and use it to wind up a rope that goes to a pulley system, you have the basic parts of a crane. But in most cranes, the input force from the engine is multiplied before it gets to this point by at least one other wheel and axle machine. The compound mechanical advantage equals the mechanical advantages of all three simple machines multiplied together. So a crane can produce an extremely great lifting force. So with simple machines, you can make your work easier by trading distance for force, or force for distance. And when simple machines work together in a compound machine, your trade can be very large because the mechanical advantage can be extremely great.
This is one of those examples of a film that came out after I was in college and not really interested. It just doesn't jibe with me really well. So definitely I wax nostalgic for the 70s and early 80s. And this one is in early 80s, I think. This was made by Cromie and Cromie, who Other films that I have by them are mostly dealing with sex ed issues. So this is kind of interesting. I kind of want to see what other films they made. So this is The Secrets to Making Good Grades. Yeah, I know. That could be related to sex ed, too. All right.
The next time you go to class, look around you. You may notice that there are a few people in the room who look a little, oh, shall we say, tense. Could be that what you're seeing are the insiders. People who found out that the only real game going on at school is the learning game, in spite of what it seems like. See, the only game that schools are really set up to offer is the learning game. And to the degree that you forget that, you, my friend, are a loser. Because if you're in school right now, that's the game you're in, whether you know it or not. Learn to play it while you're here. Because once you're out, you can't play it anymore. And that's what this film's about. Giving you the insider's edge, the successful person's edge. The tips you're about to get are not in general circulation. No, these are the secrets, the secret advantages. Tips which achievers usually keep to themselves. The kids whose stories you're about to hear didn't come to school knowing these tricks. They figured them out for themselves and used them because they worked. You don't have to use any of them, but don't say nobody ever told you.
My problem was that I always got sleepy in class, so my notes weren't too good. And I'd rationalize to myself and say, well, I'll read the book real well and make up for it. Well, then I got this part-time job, which kind of cut away at my study time. So I decided that the best thing I could do is when I get to class is just to concentrate and give it my all, you know, since I had to be there anyway. The first thing I do is I get there early and I sit up close. When I can hear and see well, and I know the teacher can see me, I tend not to get sleepy. While I'm waiting for class to begin, I read over my notes from the last class, and I try to guess what's going to be talked about. I try to get my mind in the place where the teacher's coming from. See, I think the lecture is definitely the most important part of the course because the person who gives the lecture gives the grade. You know what I mean? I pretend it's kind of a James Bondian type thing, and I try to figure out the way that the teachers think. You know, what they think is important, and how they're going to lay it on you at midterm. The minute the lecture begins, I try to put everything else out of my mind and prepare for battle. You have to be ready because usually the first words out of the teacher's mouth will be a description of what they're going to be talking about. And that's what you want to get down right away as the title in that day's notes.
We'll be continuing our discussion of Death of a Salesman today. And first I want to look at some of the issues brought up by Miller in this play.
I know I've only got this 1 hour, and I want to make it work for me. So I listen real carefully for clues to what's important, always keeping that midterm in mind. Now, there are certain expressions which are tip-offs, but you have to listen.
But most important is the fact that...
There's one. Most important.
Willie Loman is a man who simply follows wholeheartedly the ideals and values of a society obsessed by success.
Obsessed with success. As you can see, I haven't written every word. There isn't enough time. I just make sure I get the right idea.
Okay, going back over Miller's life, we can see that there were 3 major influences. 1,
there's another one.
His lower middle-class Jewish background. 2, the guidance of his English instructor at the University of Michigan, Kenneth Rowe, R-O-W-E. And 3, his own married life in Brooklyn, raising 2 children.
Now you're bound to miss something that sounds important, so leave a blank for it and go on with your note-taking. And after class, go up and ask the teacher what it was. Yes, admit you missed it. Get used to talking to the teacher. It's hard at first, but you'll get a lot of free help if you do. I know I did.
Oh, yeah. I know what it was. It was his married life in Brooklyn, raising his 2 children.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Well, if I could tell you the one thing that made a difference for me in turning C into an A on the final, it'd be reading my notes over after every class. Somewhere I remember hearing that 80% of everything you learn is forgotten in 7 days if you don't look at it again. So I got in the habit of looking at my notes right after class. It only takes a minute then because it's very fresh in your mind at that point. I underline the important stuff with a colored pen if I haven't done that before, and then I put a star by the things I think might be test questions. See, everything I do in my note-taking is aimed at that final exam. And when I do keep that in mind, I find that I don't really have any trouble.
Okay, lectures are one thing. You go to a certain place at a certain time. You know, it's all been laid out for you. But reading assignments are something else. You've got to do it all on your own. There's a way to read a book, and I fought it for years, just like I fought school for years. I used to kind of sneak up on a book, just reading the assigned pages. I think I was afraid of it. Well, you don't have to do that. When you first get your text, begin reading it from the very first page. Read the title, the author's name, and the copyright date. Read the introduction and the preface. Why? Because you're searching for clues to make the reading easier, and these are the places you can find them. The table of contents will give you an outline of what the author thinks the main elements of the subject are. More important, it may also be what your teacher considers the main elements. A lot of times a teacher will use these as a basis for test questions. And also, if you're stuck for a term paper topic, these would all be good possibilities. When you get ready to actually read the assignment, skim over the pages first. A good way to do this is to read the first and last sentence of every paragraph. Then go back and read it. I try to read as fast as I can without missing anything. That way I don't give my mind the chance to wander. When I want to mark the important parts in a book, by the way, I use a soft pencil so it can be erased later, I put a line in the margin next to the part I want to remember, and if it's especially important, I make a double line. Again, I look particularly closely at the first sentence of every paragraph. I try to find the stuff that relates to what the teacher has been giving us in the lectures. And then I look for the parts that clarify something I didn't quite understand. I mark the parts I don't get at all so that I can ask the teacher about it in class. And then when I'm finished, I make a quick review of the marked passages.
Well, I'm a slow reader, so last semester when I was assigned 5 textbooks, all over 500 pages, I knew I had to work out some kind of system for getting the reading done. So what I did was, I figured I could only read one subject for about 20 minutes at a time before my mind began to wander. So I divided up my study time into 20-minute periods. I figured the most I would read would be 3 hours a day. So I drew up this kind of schedule where I put 9 boxes below each day, and that shows a reading periods of 20 minutes each. And then when I read for a 20-minute session, I write in the name of the book and the page numbers. That way I can see my progress, and 20 minutes is a short enough period of time that I don't put it off the way I used to when I try to read all night. I don't know, it works for me.
United States. I get sleepy a lot when I'm reading, so I made up some ways to keep awake. One way is pacing and reading aloud to myself. Another is to jog or do sit-ups, but with a 5-minute time limit. Another is to change the subject I'm reading and go back to it later. And sometimes I actually put my head down on the desk and try to take a short nap. As you may have gathered, I use a timer when I study. That way the time doesn't get away from me. I also had to face the fact that if I was going to go for A's and B's, I couldn't study with the TV or stereo going. If my brother had it on and I couldn't do anything about it, I'd just have to pack up and go to the library. But there are other ways to keep yourself alert and spark some interest into a subject that basically bores you. like reading an article about it in a newspaper or magazine, or reading something about a person who's actually working in the field, or even considering it as a possible career for yourself. I've tried all these things, and at different times they've all worked, because for me, the problem is to stay awake, stay interested.
When finals come around, and they always do, I used to panic and just start going crazy trying to reread my text from page 1. And then, of course, I couldn't finish it, so I go in for the exam knowing a lot about some things and virtually nothing about most of the stuff. So I got onto this system that really works. I start by looking at the topics of each of the lectures I've been to and asking myself what I remember about it. Just the subject of that day's notes, not the notes themselves. I cover them over. Then I write down all the points I can think of. When I force myself to remember, I kind of flush out what I know. Then I compare what I've written with the facts that I've underlined and starred in my notes. Oh, brother. Okay, now I know what I don't know, so I study that. The next step is to get your textbook and take the passages that you marked and turn them into questions, like this. The Massachusetts Constitution, like the Virginia Constitution, approved in 1776, is divided into 2 parts, a Declaration of Rights and a frame of government. Let's see. The questions might be, what are the major the Constitution of Massachusetts? This is like what other Constitution? Then go back and see if you can answer them. To study this way takes guts, there's no doubt about it. You're putting yourself in the position of the teacher, and you have to face finding out what you don't know, and that's scary. But the amazing thing is that it does work. On the day of the exam, even though I'm prepared, I tend to get nervous, and then I mess up, even on the questions I know. So I know I have to do everything I can to build my self-confidence. I want to approach the exam with the feeling that it'll be easy and that I really will do well. Okay, this is what it's all been for. I don't want to blow it now. First, read all the questions very carefully. Then answer the ones I know, and then go back and do the others as best as I can. Don't lose track of time. Keep breathing deeply, and go for it.
Okay, let's stop here and go over what we've been hearing. The game is getting good grades. The playing field is here in the examination room. The winners know some things you may not know, and this is what they've been trying to tell you. First, go to every lecture. The lecture is the most important source of information because the person who gives the lecture makes up the test. As you take notes, listen for clues which tip off potential test questions. After class is over, spend a few minutes reviewing your notes. Underline and star points that have been emphasized. Get to know your textbook. Try to keep an overview of where you're headed in the book. Skim reading assignments first, and then read with a pencil, marking main points and reviewing them afterward. Break down your reading assignments into 20-minute segments, keeping track of the pages you've read on a chart. Try different ways of keeping alert during your study time, like reading aloud, taking short exercise breaks, and switching subjects when you get tired. Prepare for exams by asking yourself questions from these marked sections of your textbook and the underlined and starred points in your notes. Write the answers down and keep at it until you get them right. On exam day, try to push doubts out of your mind and take the test calmly. What you've just seen are a few of the secrets, the techniques of becoming a success in school. To make them work for you will require more than anything a change of attitude. growing up, a willingness to make the most of your time. If you have the stuff to do it, the right stuff, and you probably do, you'll eventually find yourself among that select group of people who have learned how to learn. And for people like you, there'll be no closed doors.
I think Cromie and Cromie were a husband and wife filmmaking production company. I've found some other films by them. And one was not, besides this one, the other one I found was not sex ed related. So here's a film from the National Archives, Jail Procedures. Enjoy.
There is probably no assignment that carries greater responsibility for the deputy than the assignment to the jail division. Such an assignment is a challenge not only to a deputy's knowledge, but also to his ability to handle himself as a man of maturity and dignity. In the jail division, the prime objective is security. Security which can be achieved only by constant vigilance.
Noel Webster says security is the state of being safe or sure. It means protection. To the taxpayer in the street, the squad car is a symbol of security. Whether cruising along with that familiar watchful air or heading purposely for some specific destination. Curious eyes that look through the gates of the Hall of Justice are eyes that can close and sleep each night with the feeling of security only if there is efficient performance of duty by every member of the jail division. From the moment the prisoner is taken into custody and is booked at the county jail, security is the watchword. It must be guarded with vigilance by the deputies who are bringing the prisoner in. Never for an instant is he left unguarded. When removing the suspect from the car, one officer waits until his associate always is out of the car and on the alert before he exits. John Q. Public may breathe a sigh of relief when the prisoner disappears inside the elevator, but not the chief jailer. Their job has just begun, and it won't be finished until the prisoner has left their jurisdiction. Meet a typical suspect, charged with carrying a concealed weapon. The booking of each prisoner committed to the Los Angeles County Jail takes place on the 12th floor. The arresting officers provide information on the nature of the charge, signing the booking slip, which releases the prisoner to the jail division. A quick preliminary shakedown in the cage satisfies the deputy that the prisoner has no weapons on his person. That is, nothing bigger than a small cannon. Now, before you dismiss the procedure as a lot of unnecessary detail by some paper merchant, get one thing straight. The booking slip is the only record of the prisoner on file. Judgment in many a case has been aided by information recorded on the booking slip at the time of arrest. Escaped prisoners from the road camps or the honor rancho are at times traced through the booking information given by the prisoner. The bottom half of the slip lists the property relinquished to the booking officer. It is the officer's duty to decide which articles are to be declared contraband and which turned over to the clerk until the prisoner's release. Jewelry, knives, and other small items, as well as all cash over $5.99, are placed in an envelope which bears the prisoner's serial number and the number of his tank. Next, the thorough search, which makes the preliminary shakedown look like child's play. Nothing in the hair. But what about the hat band, both inside and out? A good place to carry contraband. Narcotic addicts find them a convenient place to hide powder. A searching officer develops very sensitive fingers, which alert him to articles concealed about the person. Carefully check all pockets, starting with the coat if one is worn. Then the waistband, pants pockets, legs and cuffs. Here's a good piece of advice. It's what they tell a young fighter in the ring. Never underrate your opponent. See what I mean? Where there is one weapon, there is always a chance of a second. A careful search of each pant leg and cuff. Then you'll discover a pair of shoes is good for other purposes besides protection for the feet. Just sit tight, brother. You're next. This man requires thoroughness, for a narcotic is painstaking in his attempts to escape detection. Note again the technique of the officer's sensitive fingers as they deftly search the double seams of the prisoner's clothing, especially the collar, shirt cuffs, tie if he wears one. Behind the belt, drugs are often hidden. This first searching officer must outsmart his prisoner in order to ferret out the hiding place of any powdered narcotics in bindles. Any pill or capsule, sugar-coated pills, vitamin tablets, and the like, if found, are merely placed in the prisoner's property. Again, thoroughness is the watchword. Remember this. One addicted to narcotics will use any ruse he knows to keep the drug available. One of the commonest tricks of all, a capsule secreted in the hair. Vital statistics, all a part of the prisoner's record. His weight and his height. All prisoners must sign the fingerprint card, and some are required to submit a sample of their handwriting on these cards. All prisoners charged with felonies must undergo this extra procedure. Care must be exercised to secure a perfect imprint of all fingers and thumbs. A cagey prisoner knows that a blurred print is difficult to classify. Fingerprints are later classified and checked against the fingerprint file to ascertain if the prisoner is wanted on other charges or if he has a previous record. Information from these cards is forwarded to the State Bureau of Identification and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. It is common knowledge that the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department does one of the finest mugging jobs in the business. Two views. First, a front. Then, a profile bearing his serial number, which completes the prisoner's record. From the eye room to the bathroom. Due to the nature of the charge, this prisoner merely gets the routine search. Nothing in the mouth, nothing in the ears or hair. Nothing on the soles of the feet. He is now sent to the shower room for a bath, which is mandatory for healthy and sanitary reasons. Again, the narcotic is a special problem. The human body is fearfully and wonderfully made. and leave it to the narcotic to make full use of it in his attempt to bring contraband into the jail. Only a staff doctor may remove bandages from a prisoner's wounds. But there are no holds barred on the officer's search of the prisoner's mouth. This guy is loaded. And where some contraband is found, there may be more. Chances are that within this tiny packet of wax paper may be found gum opium. Parts of clothing which could not be examined are now thoroughly scrutinized. A close examination of the shoes, including the lining. Here again, the sensitive fingers. Remove rubber heels and examine any recesses therein. What? Another key? This fish was really loaded. Such places as all the double thicknesses of the outer clothing are likely hiding places. Repetition of the search for drugs may seem superfluous to the uninitiated, but too much stress cannot be placed on thoroughness to prevent narcotics being smuggled into the institution. The suspect charged with carrying a concealed weapon has passed the physical, which is given in the jail hospital, and is sent to the blanket room. The narcotic has an appointment with the doctor in the custody of an officer. Remember those bandages down in the bathroom? In the hospital, a doctor is on duty to treat any ailments, real or fancied. A gauze bandage may conceal a lot of narcotics. The prisoner reports to a trustee for his allocated bedding. These prisoners are returning to their tank after having their bath, which they are required to take at least once a week. The new inmate is now placed in the tank or cell block to which he is assigned. There may be no welcome mat on the doorstep of the prisoner's new home, but rest assured, preparations for his arrival are detailed and well rehearsed. The trustee takes the property slip and assigns the prisoner a cell. Oh, fine. Not only double accommodations, but a psycho for a cellmate. So you won't talk, huh? The property slip is returned to the prisoner, who must take good care of it, for it must be shown before he goes to court. Nearly all attempted jailbreaks are made at meal times, since the cell blocks are opened at fixed periods of time. After ordering everybody into their cells, the officer grasps the master lever and calls, "Clear the gate." The lever is then moved outward and downward from the upper position slowly to avoid injury to any person that could be caught in the gate. Don't slam until about 4 inches from the lower locked position. After the trustee has placed the food containers in front of the tank gate, the officer then unlocks the box door and reverses the key before he opens the tank gate. After the trustee has placed the food in the tank, the process is reversed and the tank gate locked. Never at any time should a prisoner be out of his cell in the tank when food containers are being put in or taken out. Cell number 1 is then unlocked so that the inside trustee may place the food for themselves in their own cells. The officer then unlocks all other cells and prisoners are fed. After the food is dispensed at 3:30 p.m., the containers are removed from the tank. Before unlocking the cell doors, always double-check the tank gate. Remember, security. To unlock the cells, grasp the cell locking levers. Bring them to the lower position, pause briefly, and then release. The master lever is then brought upward, locking the cell doors open. Should any difficulty be encountered locking the cell doors, call the sergeant's desk immediately and help will be sent. Officers must not enter the tank to determine the trouble. Never, under any conditions, enter the tank with keys on your person. Don't take chances. The reason? Security. When a prisoner is removed from his cell to go to court, he must first show the tank officer his property slip. This is an excellent opportunity for the officer to fall for a prisoner's request to mail a letter outside the jail without going through censorship channels. But it didn't take this deputy long to realize his mistake and get the letter to the censors where it belongs. Which goes to show it takes more than a uniform to make a sheriff's deputy.
Regardless of area of duty or type of duty, a deputy follows prescribed regulations. He goes by the book, and he does it for the good reasons we all know. Our profession has certain hazards, even in a jail where lawbreakers would seemingly be under control. But sometimes, through mixed feelings of security and perhaps pity, a deputy relaxes. Having the human desire to be kind, to be personally well thought of, he breaks down the barrier between prisoner and jailer. He becomes friendly. We call it fraternization. 97% of all deputies who have lost their positions while assigned to the jail division have lost them because of fraternization. It is a basic truth that prisoners are diametrically opposed to everything you stand for. Some of them hate you. That is not important. What is important is the fact that they must respect you. You earn that by knowing your job and performing it efficiently and with dignity.
It appears as if we're in for some excitement from our psycho. Characteristic symptoms which often result in a prisoner's blowing his top. The officer locks all other prisoners in their cells and sends for help. During moments such as this, active minds grasp for any opportunity to escape. A kite sails down the corridor when other minds are thinking in the same track.
You can't do it. You can't do this. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want you to do it. No. Please help me. Please. Oh, it's easy. I need your help. Please. Please.
Soap doesn't make an ideal sap, but this is no time to quibble, and a prisoner's mind clutches its straws with zest for the attempt of escape. In the hospital, under the supervision of the doctor, the prowlers strip the psycho for the padded cell. It takes the strength of several men to subdue a person under such stress.
I don't want to go in there. No. I have to
Security goes out the window. In an unguarded moment, the deck officer fails to have himself backed up and enters the cell block with the key on his person. Now things start to happen fast. A telephone alarm tips off the paging and control system, nerve center of the jail. The officer on duty can contact any and all officers instantly and dispatch them to any part of the jail within 1 or 2 minutes. Position 2 on the control dial sounds the alarm in the main office of the Sheriff's Department, room 220, assuring proper coverage around the building. The switches to the intercommunicating phone system are placed in strategic position so the officer can sound the alarm. All inside stairway doors are secured during an attempted break. Solitary confinement for the would-be jailbreakers. And the hospital for the deck officer who got in the way. This is the attorney room where every prisoner is entitled to a last visit by his nearest of kin before leaving for San Quentin. The Johnson office isn't the only agency that watches the length and technique of those touching farewell scenes. A useful plaything for a prisoner about to go up. On your way, brother. Where you're going, they recommend other forms of entertainment. A close friendship that will last from Los Angeles to San Quentin, California. This is the bottleneck handcuff. More difficult to pick and more comfortable for travel. Oh yes, there is one other courtesy extended. Each prisoner gets his own individual guard. And so, another group of prisoners leaves the jurisdiction of the Los Angeles County Jail Division. Once again, security has paid off. And friend Webster's definition, the state of being safe or sure, has been sustained by the efficient performance of duty by the men of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
Wow, a jailbreak. I did not expect that in that film. Pretty quaint, and you know, hindsight gives us the benefit to know how this whole process can be corrupted and how things can go wrong. But you know, it's an idyllic sense of how things are supposed to go, and that's what most of these educational films are. It's not necessarily how things are, but how we want things to be. So anyways, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate you watching and tuning in. If you like what you saw, hit thumbs up. Even if you've done it recently, you know, that helps with the weird math that YouTube does as far as sharing our videos with other people. When things go viral, then we start making more money and get more subscribers, but things don't, I don't know what makes things go viral. And I tend to think that YouTube uses these weird numbers to figure that out. So subscribe, hit the notification bell, hit the thumbs up. You can also contribute via the Super Thanks button. That's another way to support us in paying all the rent that we pay for all these films. You can also support us by going to ko-fi.com/avgeeks or patreon.com/avgeeks. Those are great ways to also support us with some cash. Everybody have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.